Hello, Conf42 DevOps 2025. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to be doing this talk that I'm going to be doing to you today. I hope you're having an amazing event, having a ton of fun, and learning a lot. So, shall we start? Okay, so incidents happen when you least expect. One moment you're happily delivering a new feature you've been working on, the next one you get an alert that something is wrong, and apparently production's your fire. When this happens, the human instinct is to worry, is to get stressed. There's anxiety. Well, to that, I'm here to tell you, don't panic. We're going to be talking a bit today about effective incident response. Just before we continue, let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Afonso. I'm a developer advocate at PagerDuty. I'm an instructor at Again.io. I'm the author of a book called State Management with React Query. And you can find me pretty much anywhere online at the handle Daniel JC Afonso. If you want to connect with me as well, you can find me on afonso@pagerduty.com or connect in our community page at community.pagerduty.com. Let's talk about incident response. So, what is incident response? Incident response is an organized approach to addressing and managing an incident. You see, companies handle incidents differently every day, and most of them can handle incidents without having an organized incident response process, though. But with an effective incident response process, your goal isn't just to solve the incident, it's to handle it in an organized way. Therefore, the organized word. It's in an organized way that will allow you to limit damage and will allow you to reduce recovery time and costs. So the keyword, after all, you can give a developer a keyboard and some time and they will solve the problem. Incident response is about solving the problem quickly while minimizing this damage and reducing the associated costs to it. So, how can we get started with incident response? There are 3 steps that we can follow. The first one is to use a systematic learning and improvement. This means that you can build off the mistakes you make and avoid repeating them in the future. You keep learning, you keep improving. The second one is to mobilize and inform only the right people at the right time. This will make the resolution effort more efficient, will drive down the overall time to resolve incidents, and will reduce the strain and overwork on your staff. And then the third, it's how to make everything you can. You should make technology work for you, and you should make it work for you by setting up rules and actions that will trigger automatically when there's time and when you need them. The bottom line is we want to replace chaos with calm. Like I said previously, it's very easy to go into panic mode. It's very easy to stress and get nervous. But this is not good during an incident. It will only add to the problem and will cause more confusion. We want stuff to be calm and organized. Our incident response process is heavily based on the Incident Command System, or ICS for short. So for those of you who are not familiar, ICS was developed after some devastating wildfires that happened in Southern California in the 1970s. When this happened, thousands of firefighters responded. But an issue happened. Well, they found out that it was tricky to work together because they were very good individually. They knew how to fight these fires by themselves, but they lacked a common framework on how to do it together as a larger group. So this framework they developed is used by everyone from local fire department responding to a house fire to the US government responding to a natural disaster and several other organizations around the world. It provides a standard enough response that everyone is familiar with, and it will help prevent confusion and chaos during an incident, especially when working cross-functionally. It sounds pretty good, right? Now, the first step to having an organized incident response process is to define some key terms. And the first one is, what's an incident? It might sound too obvious, but if you ask around, different companies are going to have different definitions. At PagerDuty, we define an incident as any unplanned disruption or degradation of service that is actively affecting customers' ability to use the product. Some companies also include some internal-facing disruptions like having a security breach or not being able to run month-end accounting. If any business metrics has deviated from normal behavior, this can be considered an incident. Whether you're experiencing a substantial number of failed transactions on your shopping cart or a large increase in processing time for lineups in your store, These could be considered incidents as your service is being negatively impacted. What should be important here is that you should use a definition that works for you. As long as you have a standardized definition that is widely known throughout your organization and you keep it simple, it should work. The last thing you want is ambiguity when there's an outage and people are stressing out. Now, after an incident, the next level is to define what a major incident is. A major incident is harder to define because it will, once again, vary between organizations. We have found that major incidents have a few things in common. So, the first thing is they often happen with little or no warning. Then you must respond quickly. Yeah, having these services degraded or down will cost your company a ton of money and valuable resources. The third thing is you will rarely understand what's happening at the beginning of the incident. You're going to encounter bumps and turns all over. And the fourth stuff is you must mobilize a team of the right responders to resolve an issue. And they should coordinate cross-functionally to get a response. At PagerDuty, our definition of a major incident is any incident that requires a coordinated response between multiple teams. This definition should be short and a simple statement that will make sure that, once again, everyone is on the same page and everyone understands what we're talking about. In particular, you want to remove any discussions or disagreements around if something is happening or if it's actually a major incident or not. This is not something that you want to happen when the house is on fire and everyone is discussing, is this actually a major incident? So make sure that your definition is short and straight to the point. Something that could be helpful as well is if you have a metric to use, like when we experience more than 100 errors per minute, it's a major incident. That's great. You can also tie it to the customer impact, like deciding we're experiencing a major incident when more than 5% of our customers are affected. So discuss with your company, get it written, and make sure everyone understands it and is on the same page. The reason this should be a first step is you can't respond to an incident until you know what an incident is. If one person considers something an incident, but the rest of the organization doesn't, then it's going to create ambiguity and confusion during the incident response. So, repeating, brainstorm and decide on a clear definition, and then standardize it across your entire organization so that everyone has the same understanding. Like I said, you want to replace chaos with calm. By having a definition for both incidents and major incidents, then you can add in the clarity for a team to know what to do next. So these definitions create a distinction between normal operations and emergency operations. Once you cross the line into emergency operations, your decision-making processes will change even dramatically. So there are stuff that you would do on normal operations that wouldn't be acceptable, but when you're in emergency mode, you could do it. Like, for instance, deploying code without tests. This might be unacceptable during normal operations, but perfectly acceptable when there's a major incident and you need to recover quickly. The way you operate, your role hierarchy, and the level of risk you're willing to take will change as you move out of normal operations and into incident response mode. This is why we recommend that you use metrics tied for business impact. For example, a metric we monitor at PagerDuty is number of outbound notifications per second. At Amazon, it could be number of orders per second. At Netflix, it could be stream starts per second. Monitoring, it's important. And monitoring these important metrics will then help you determine the severity of an incident and the type of response you should use. So if you use metrics that aren't tied to any business impact, for instance, the CPU usage is high on the host, then it can be difficult or even sometimes impossible to determine the severity of an incident that's associated with that metric. What you really want, it's a metric that lets you know how your business is doing and how it's doing, not how a particular piece of an equipment is doing. Remember, making a wrong decision is better than making no decision at all. A wrong decision gives you more useful information to work with, while making no decision gives you nothing at all. Think of it as trying to reduce the spread of a fire. If you just sit there and decide okay, what are my options? Let's think about them. Your house might burn without knowing it. So in a sense, taking no action is an action. we can call this even decision paralysis. So remember this, please make a decision. You get learnings from it and you know what to do afterwards. Now, how do you move out of normal operations into an emergency mode? Well, you trigger the incident response. Obviously, you can do it on PagerDuty or on the tool that you're using. We recommend two ways of triggering this process. First, we encourage automatic detection and triggering within the product wherever it can be done effectively and accurately. If an organization has working integrations and reliable metrics that track business impact, such as loss of sales per minute or success rate for API calls, we recommend you that you leverage this knowledge and use it to automatically trigger an incident. This will reduce time wasted on human-based assessment and will drive down the time to resolution. Second, we highly encourage humans to manually trigger the incident too. This is very important at PagerDuty. By lowering the barrier to triggering an incident response leads to a dramatic increase in the speed of which incidents are resolved. We don't want people to sit on a problem because the alarm hasn't gone off yet. If customer support, for instance, gets a lot of requests very quickly, well, this is probably a sign that something is wrong, right? So how do we as humans trigger the process? Well, we do it with a chat command, but don't feel like that's the only way. I just wanted to demonstrate it to give you an idea. You can do it however you want. Use the hair horn, having a flashing light on the office. You can hire a mariachi band, whatever. Do what you prefer. The point is, you want having a way to trigger this response that's fast, easy, and available to everyone. Once you have triggered the incident, now we have a stable, repeatable pattern to follow when responding. So our steps to our process when dealing with an incident is the following one. So we follow the triage, mobilize, resolve, and prevent process. So when you're notified that an incident is happening, you first must access and triage it. Here you will assess the severity and the urgency of the incident. Secondly, you need to mobilize the right people who can work together towards the resolution, and that leads us to resolving. Now we are all working together towards a common goal, which is to resolve the incident. The last step is to prevent the incident from happening again in the future. We don't want having multiple incidents on the case of the same issue, so we need to make sure that we prevent it. Now, in order for these steps to happen, we need to have the right team and roles engaged. And this is where we come into the roles of incident response, and we're going to go over each one of them. So, the top section that we have here, it's the command section. And this includes 3 critical roles, starting with the most important one, which is the incident commander. This is the highest ranked person on the incident response system. When an incident response happens, yes, they're even more important than the CEO of the company. They should be the single source of truth during an incident, and they are the ones in charge. They make all the decisions, and no action should be performed unless the incident commander gives the go-ahead. They will help drive major incidents resolution and coordinate the response. And the best part of this is that they don't even need to have technical knowledge. As long as they understand your incident response process and they know how the steps involved with being an incident commander, they can do it. And that's what's really exciting about this. Next, underneath the incident commander, we have the scribe and the deputy. The scribe is responsible for documenting the timeline of the incident as it progresses. And the scribe is also responsible for making sure that, well, all the important decisions and data are captured and can be later reviewed. At PagerDuty, we use Slack to keep an internal record of major incidents, and the scribe will post in the specific channel for this incident to record the live progress of the incident. This way, we have a solid history of what was discussed, what were the decisions that were made, and anyone in the company can go ahead and they can read it for status updates if they'd like. If you have Slack or Teams, at the end of the day, it will depend on the tool you're using. I'd recommend you have an incident response channel set up for your department or for your team. You can keep it open and ongoing each time that there's an incident, and this way, when an incident occurs, you're not looking for, okay, where's that incident specific channel? Make sure it's there, make sure everyone knows which one it is. Then we have the deputy. So the deputy is a direct support role for the incident commander. This is not a shadow. They're not just there observing. The deputy is expected to perform some important tasks during the incident. They make sure that the incident commander is on focus and that they can be there supporting when whatever they need or whatever the task they do. So basically, they are the right-hand person to the incident commander. Then on the liaison parts, we have the internal liaison and the customer liaison. So they're responsible for communication, and they're responsible for communication with the company in the case of the internal liaison, and with the customers in the case of the customer liaison. Duty provides a status page tool that keeps customers updated on the impact of the incident in real time, and these are the folks that are responsible for coordinating this effort. Now, onto the operations section. These are basically the people that get hands-on. The subject matter expert or the resolver, when an incident happens, they will be the ones who are alerted first. This is because they are the ones who have technical expertise, and they are the ones who can access the incident and determine if they can resolve it on their own, or if the impact is too large for that. If the business impact is too great, and there's a large amount of subject matter experts needed, then the primary on-call responder will page the on-call incident commander and begin the incident response process. This operations staff group of subject matter experts may consist of one or more people, depending on the severity of the incident, the size of your department, and number of teams. Keep in mind, and this is important, this chart might increase or decrease. This is just an example of how we do it here at PagerDuty. We have seen ones who are too long enough to write a book on, and we have seen ones that reduce this chart even more considerably. So look at your organization, figure out what makes sense and how you would adapt. How do I prepare to manage an incident response team? Well, the next sections we're going to go over a couple of steps. Starting with the step 1. Ensure explicit processes and expectations exist and that people are trained. And this means, well, create standardized definitions. And I've talked about this before. Make sure everyone knows what an incident is and what a major incident is. Define your incident response process and communication channels, and make sure everyone on the organization is on the same page. You need to make sure that everyone is involved and understands how stuff works, because without everyone being on the same page, stuff is not going to work out properly. Then, practice running major incidents as a team. This will help the team to practice, and it will enable responders to act more calm and collected. This way, when the real stuff happens, they'll be ready. Think about this. So if a firefighter only fought 1 or 2 small fires a year, and then suddenly they're called to a major and a forest fire, they'll probably panic. They're less likely to act calm, cool, and collected. So how do you handle this? You practice. A great way to practice is if you have an incident that might be of an downrated severity, but you can say, okay, now this is not this is a low severity incident, but let's treat it as a major incident. This way you will learn how your response process worked, and you'll be able to tune your systems to better understand that you're not triggering a major incident when they're less severe. This is why at PagerDuty we run Failure Fridays. It keeps us on our toes, and it makes us be ready when and at any moment notice. The point of this exercise is to make sure that the production operation systems are doing what we need them to do and when we need them to do, and that this can be a number of different subsystems. So for instance, are the metrics and the observability tools giving us the right telemetry in the right way at the right time? Are de-escalation policies, notifications, incident rooms working the way we expect them to? Does everyone know what's expecting of them and where they need to be? And then if we need to push a fix, how fast can we do it, and who has the authority and ability to do that? Make sure you find a process that works for you. A tip on how to get started. What would you do on an incident case? You should start evaluating that first, and then you can practice around that. Step 3. You should make sure that you find ways to tune your processes for your teams to work. Here you are looking for process improvements, stakeholder expectations, disruptions, and stuff that might trickle down the responders or rise up to stakeholders. Step 4, make checklists. Make a checklist that you can run through when an incident happens to make sure that you have everything covered. You can think about airplanes, for instance. Pilots literally have a pre-flight checklist. And no matter how many times they've flown in their careers, how much experience they are legally have to go through this list and they make sure that every item is completed and ticked off. The truth is, people will make mistakes. It's in our nature, especially when we are stressing. We tend to forget stuff. So the best way to mitigate this risk is to have a list. The lists also help to work pause points in your process so that everyone has a chance to take a breath, relax, and continue to do the work in a calm environment without panic. So these are actual checklists that we have at PagerDuty when we have high severity incidents. I'm not going to dictate this to you. You can take a screenshot now. You can access the slides afterwards. I'm sharing them. The key message is that these seem like very easy, simple steps that we won't forget, but during times in panic, it's very easy to miss some of them. Checklists will reduce the mental strain on you and will have a large impact when stuff happens. And last but not least, do your postmortems or post-incident reviews. Here you should review what happened during the incident, both for insights of where our engineering practices need to be improved, but also for insights on where our incident response process was not clear. The reason why our incident response process has been so successful throughout the years is because we have iterated it over time, and we still continue to do it. People get together after incidents, we discuss what happened, and we create an organized approach to an emergency situations and tailor it to our needs. Because of this, we now have a consistent and unified approach to incident response. Please, that's very important. Don't miss post-incident reviews. Okay, now, you have all the steps to deal with incident response, but sometimes stuff is going to happen. There are going to be issues, there are going to be pains, and we're going to have pitfalls. So we're going to take a few minutes now to talk about other pitfalls we've come across. The first one, and a very common one, it's called executive swoop. Well, it's actually executive swoop and poop, but I was asked not to put that on the slide. So we're going to look at some more common examples of executive swoop next. One thing that's important noting here is that none of these things happen maliciously. No executive will join the meeting with the intent of messing up the process or delaying stuff. They are there to try to motivate people, find out what's going on, and make sure the issue is gone. It's their business too. So let's look at some common examples. First one, an executive comes in and says, okay, everyone, let's try and resolve this in 10 minutes, please. And on the surface, this might seem pretty okay, pretty unharmful. The executive is just there to try to motivate everyone and encourage us to solve the problem quickly, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not how it's going to be perceived. Saying something like this assumes that people aren't already working as hard as possible to solve the problem. It's not by if I'm trying to fix an issue for the past 2 hours and someone comes in and said, okay, let's try to make sure this is wrapped up in 10 minutes, that I'm gonna fix it in 10 minutes, right? This will just demotivate me and add additional stress. The job of the incident commander here is to step in and try to clarify that, okay, calm down, we are doing the best we can during our time, and let's try to keep things on track. Another executive swoop that happened. An executive joins the call and they ask for a list of impacted customers. There is just a problem with this. I understand that you might need it, but for us to do this and to get this list, we'll need to take someone away from the effort of responding to this incident when we need them the most. So let's just not let the executive know that this is happening and that we cannot do this. The third one. Oftentimes, the executive will hop on an incident response call and begin asking a lot of questions around specific impact. And sometimes they'll ask you for something large and time-consuming, and they'll just say, okay, do what I say. Well, this is where the incident commander comes in. You just ask them, do you wish to take command? And you should see how often they don't answer with yes. If they do, great, okay, the incident commander says, okay, everyone, be advised, I'm handing over to this person, I'm out. But most of the time people will say no, or won't even answer. In which case, the incident commander keeps the processes going as usual, and they can even say, in that case, remember, I'm in command of this incident. Please save your discussion for after the call. Executive swoop happens because of one thing, which is most of the times failure to notify stakeholders. You should keep your stakeholders informed on a regular cadence. Transparency is key. It will help ensure that people and other executives don't need to join the incident call, and it will also allow the stakeholders to field questions from customers so that your team isn't interrupted. This gives your organization confidence enough that the situation is under control and that you can take it. It's very important. This is why it's important to have all those channels and those internal liaisons communicating stuff. If everyone has the right information that they need, then most of the times they won't feel the need to hop on into a call. Now, one step that's important to, not one step, one thing it's important to avoid is not having too much status updates. If you keep giving too many stats updates, most of the times they are unnecessary and they are wasting people's time. So we like to keep internal updates to every 30 minutes or immediately after a change occurs, either it being an improvement or a resolution. Now, another mistake that often happens as well is red herrings. These are things like clues that are misleading or distracting. For example, we have been on calls where people, and when everyone is convinced that the issue is with the network. However, after some of the times, after a couple of minutes, people realized that they hadn't checked recent deploys. And surprise, surprise, the source of the problem was in a code change, which they often are. So don't get sucked into obsessively following one-line investigations and miss the true cause of the incident. This is where the incident commander needs to keep in check and keep asking questions and encouraging the team to step back from just focusing on one small situation and look at all the options at hand. So there are other common pitfalls that I won't go over because this will turn this talk very, very long, but here are some of them. So debating the severity of an incident during the call. You don't want to stop what you're doing to discuss the severity. If you're already going with it, assume that's the severity you're treating it and do the process as you should, and then do the post-mortem review. Then discussing process and policy decisions. Once again, not the time, not the place. This is why it's important everyone knows and is on the same page. Once again, if this happens, during the post-incident review, make sure that everyone is aligned. Then, not disseminating policy changes. This is something that can happen. So if changes happen and people are not informed, this will lead to another of some of the previous stuff here. Hesitating to escalate to other responders. This happens often when subject matter experts can be scared or afraid of admitting that they don't know how to deal with the problem. The issue here is this is often a sign of a culture where people are afraid to step up and admit that they don't know. If it disseminates the right culture and the right practices, and people know that, okay, it's not knowing, it's basically figuring out, if I don't know how to handle this, I'm going to pass it to someone who knows how to handle this situation and fix it. Then neglecting the post-incident review and follow-up activities. This one speaks for itself. Trying to take on multiple roles. So an incident commander should be an incident commander, a subject matter expert should be a subject matter expert, the customer liaison should be the customer liaison. So it's important that everyone knows their roles. There are situations where this might depend, but most of the times it shouldn't happen where one person has more. Then stopping everything and getting everyone on the call. So all hands on deck. Let's everyone together in the same call and try to fix this. Well, you don't want this to happen. You want to have chaos. You should only have the people there in this discussion that can and will contribute to it, and everyone else can be updated towards following the channel notes being taken by the scribe. Another thing, forcing everyone to stay on the call. So you don't want people to stay on the incident response call if they don't need to be there. They're not contributing. Most of the time, these discussions happen at 3 or 4 a.m. If these people are not there doing anything anymore, release them. Let them go have their rest or focus on other things. They can check up on what happened afterwards. And then other stuff, assuming that silence means that there are no progress. Most of the time, just because people are quiet doesn't mean that stuff is not happening. People are working on stuff. They are fixing their issues. They are fixing the issue the best they know. They're doing stuff. Obviously, there's going to be times where you need to keep the updates, but don't assume that if people are quiet, nothing is happening. So, in a summary of everything we've seen in this talk is this one. So first, use the incident command system for managing your incidents. Second, make sure that there's an incident commander that can take charge during emergency scenarios. Make sure that expectations are set upwards, that your stakeholders and everyone in the company, high level chiefs and levels, know how stuff works. Work with your team to set explicit processes and expectations. Once again, expectations are the most important thing during incidents. Everyone needs to know what to do, how to react, and how they should carry themselves. Practice, practice, practice. Like I said, a firefighter that only fought one or two small fires is not going to know how to handle a huge one. So you need to keep practicing and figuring out how you and your team carries themselves when major incidents show up. And finally, don't forget to review your processes and keep improving. So if you want to get more details on incident response and this process, this session only covered a bit of the beginning on stuff we have documented on our operations guide at PagerDuty. So you can check the response.pagerduty.com to get more information, learn more about the processes. This is an open source guide that isn't specific only to PagerDuty. Many companies have taken segments of our guide and inserted it in their own documentations. Besides that, we have plenty other operations guide that you can learn and check. So stuff like post-incident reviews, operational reviews, full service ownership. So you can go ahead and check them. You can also connect with us at communities.pagerduty.com. So our PagerDuty Commons, it's where everyone can go ahead and ask questions, talk about PagerDuty, developer operations, anything you think it's relevant, go ahead and you can check it. So there's this QR code that you can scan to take you there. And I also invite you to connect with me. If you have any questions after this presentation, you can connect with me at any social medias, and it will be a pleasure to talk with all of you. So I would like to thank Conf42 for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here talking with everyone. And hopefully now by the end of this talk, you know that you don't need to panic and you have some insights on how to have an effective incident response. I'm Daniel Afonso. Thank you so much for having me.